The first question is, how far has Budget 2012 been influenced by the realization of deep social problems that was surfaced by the GE 2011? More accurately, does it take a general election for the government to realize something has to be done to remedy social issues? So that's the first question. The second question is, in the same vein, how can Singapore maintain its economic well-being while ensuring a good welfare system for all?
Thank you. Well, the first question, whether we are doing things because of lessons learned in the GE of 2011. This is a bit of an urban myth, you know. There's some things we have done since the GE, which I would say reflect a recognition of sentiment, mood, and problems which existed, some of which we actually acknowledged during the GE itself. In housing, for instance, some of the things we are doing. But frankly, the things that I was talking about and the major themes of this budget, how we're trying to improve livelihoods by raising productivity, improving training schemes, what we're doing on social mobility, what we're doing for the aged. These were things that we've been talking about for a few years now and started doing in a very intensive way several years ago. In the last 5 years especially, I would say, we made major moves towards greater inclusivity. Workfare, which for those of you who are unfamiliar, is a very major intervention where the government tops up the wages of at least about 20% of workers, tops up their wages by between 10 to 25%. Older workers, those above 45. Major intervention in what is otherwise a free labor market. Major intervention. Workfare training scheme, very heavily subsidized, almost free training for low-income workers. Comcare, again, we only started that in 2006. Major scheme, many different forms of assistance. Medifund, very substantial expansion in Medifund, so that those who can't afford healthcare costs get help through Medifund. Housing grants, very significant enhancement for the lower income group. Not just the additional housing grant, which a large proportion of Singaporeans get, either when they buy on the resale market, and if they don't buy a BTO where you already get the discount. But in addition to that, a special housing grant, which you get even in the BTO market if you're lower income, and which makes it possible for even relatively low-income Singaporeans to own a home and to look at home ownership together with what they're doing in the job market, together with the schemes to assist them to raise their incomes as a way of improving their lot in life. So many things that we've been doing in the last 5 years. And in this year's budget, we are moving further, particularly with regard to the elderly. So it's not, not everything starts and ends with a GE of 2011. And quite frankly, this has been an oversold story. But there's some things which we learned, which are political, some things which we learned on the social side, but these major themes that I'm talking about didn't start with GE 2011. I say that quite candidly. Second question is a very broad question. How do we combine economic competitiveness and growth with keeping our society cohesive? And that's a central question that every government has to address. And as I mentioned, in some societies, they did the social side very well for some time. Very high degree of social provisions. But it wasn't economically sustainable. First, their growth is affected because of extremely high tax rates. Secondly, the debts keep accumulating and they ultimately have to be paid. And the financial crisis is a very sharp expression of the limits of that strategy. So we've got to find the right balance in Singapore. We need to do more. We need to step up social policy. But make sure it's targeted and make sure that help goes to those who need it most, which is typically the lower income group, the disabled, and make sure the middle income group gets enough support so that they see Singapore as a place where they've always got opportunities to move up. So target our assistance, make sure that it's supported by government revenues, and not postpone problems to the future. This is a major problem in all democracies, and we will increasingly face that problem of looking at the short term more than the long term and leaving problems to be sorted out later on. In fact, they can't be postponed forever. There's eventually a D-Day. They can't be postponed forever. So it's a balance that we've got to strike, but basically I'm quite optimistic because I think we have a system where the economy stays competitive because there's good incentive for people to work hard, to train, to improve. There's good support for the lower income group, and the middle income group has a relatively low tax rate compared to most countries. Taxes are never nice, but it's a relatively low tax rate compared to most countries. And we've got to keep that going and ensure that, quite apart from what the government does, that we have a whole set of organizations and individuals who are themselves trying to keep this going, trying to make sure our social compact remains strong. In every neighborhood, through societies, through voluntary organizations, people who want to take the initiative on their own to improve things in their own neighborhood, to help the elderly, help the poor, help children to read better, help children to gain confidence in themselves. A lot of this is about local action and local initiative, and I see so much of it myself in my own constituency, in other parts of Singapore. Very interesting examples of how young people are coming forward, and some not so young people who've succeeded in their professions or their businesses, coming forward and wanting to do something to help others. Not difficult to do, but something that we need to keep going and need to do more of, so that we are truly an inclusive society, not because of what government does, but because we are all trying to play a role to make this a better society.